I think the universe is just saying something here too. Maybe the angels are singing, oh my gosh, the laws changed in Utah.
The sound of the gavel cracked through the courtroom like a thunderclap, sharp, final, and impossible to ignore. Every whisper died. Even the hum of the old ceiling fan seemed to hesitate in the sudden stillness. The room carried the scent of varnished oak, dust, and tension. Christine Brown stood in that silence, her back straight, her breath steady but measured. Her eyes burning with the kind of calm fury that only comes after years of loving the wrong person. The polished wood floor beneath her heels reflected fragments of light from the chandeliers above. And for an absurd second, she thought she saw her own reflection shaking. Across the aisle sat Kody Brown, once a man whose charisma filled entire television screens, now reduced to a restless shadow of his former confidence. The arrogance that had once been his armor had melted into unease, and his gaze, usually proud and commanding, flickered like a candle about to die. He sat rigid, shoulders squared, as if bracing for an unseen blow. But the tremor in his fingers betrayed the battle beneath the facade. Christine's chest rose and fell with quiet resolve. She had imagined this day so many times that reality almost felt like a memory. Around her, reporters lined the benches, their pens and phones ready, their eyes glittering with the hunger for scandal. The courtroom was more than a hall of justice. Today it was an arena, a place where truth and reputation would wrestle in front of the watching world. Flashbacks drifted through her mind. The nights when cameras captured smiles that weren't real. Dinners where laughter masked discontent. The endless pretense of harmony for the sake of family. She remembered standing beside Kody during interviews, answering questions about unity while feeling invisible. Every word she'd once swallowed echoed inside her now, forming the backbone of her strength. The judge, an older man with weary eyes and an almost paternal patience, surveyed the room like someone aware he was presiding over more than a legal proceeding. He cleared his throat, the sound magnified by the acoustics of the wooden chamber. "Mrs. Brown," he began, "you may proceed." His tone was neither kind nor cold, merely steady, the voice of authority in a space trembling with emotion. Christine stepped forward. The heels of her shoes clicked once, twice before she reached the witness stand. Every movement felt symbolic, a rhythm of defiance and grace. Her hand brushed the edge of the table, grounding her in the present. "I do," she said softly, as she swore the oath, the two words carrying a power they never had in her marriage. When she looked up again, her gaze found Kody's hand for the briefest instant. Time folded inward. She saw him not as he was now, but as he'd been, smiling, charming. The man who once convinced her that faith and love could conquer all. But now those memories belonged to another lifetime, one she no longer mourned. She began to speak. Her voice was calm, even melodic, but beneath the serenity was steel. "For years," she said, "I believed that loyalty meant silence." The sentence hung in the air like a verdict. A murmur rippled through the spectators' benches. Christine continued, her words steady, her eyes fixed forward. "I believed that love meant endurance, that pain was a test, that patience was a virtue. But the truth is, endurance became erasure. I stopped existing for myself." Across the room, Kody shifted uncomfortably. He could feel the gaze of the public press upon him, like heat from too many suns. For years, he had controlled the narrative, his charm shaping how the world saw their family. But here, under the fluorescent courtroom lights, there was no editing, no second take, no clever confessionals to soften the edges. Every blink, every sigh, every tightening of his jaw was now evidence of a man unraveling. Christine's lawyer, a composed woman in a navy suit, handed her a stack of documents. "Mrs. Brown," she prompted gently, "could you explain what led to this separation?" Christine nodded. She took a deep breath, her fingers trembling slightly as she touched the paper's marriage licenses. Bank statements, custody notes, all artifacts of a life dissected. "It wasn't one thing," she said finally. "It was thousands of small moments. The sound of a door closing before I could speak. The way he'd say 'we' when it meant him. The nights he'd walk past me as if I were furniture. Cody's eyes flicked up, and for a heartbeat, regret crossed his face, real or rehearsed. No one could tell. As she spoke, memories bled into the present. The courtroom dissolved, replaced by flickers of another world, the house where laughter once lived. The couch where arguments began, the kitchen table where she'd waited for him to return. Christine remembered the smell of his cologne fading from the hallway, the laughter from the other wives' rooms, and how silence had become her only companion. She remembered holding her children close at night, promising them peace while hiding her own storm. Her voice trembled but never broke. "You can't keep building a life on empty words," she said. "You can't keep preaching unity when your heart is divided. I was part of his story, but he never let me write a single line." Someone in the audience exhaled audibly. The judge's gavel tapped once, a polite warning to maintain order. But even he couldn't disguise the empathy flickering behind his stern demeanor. Christine's narrative poured like a confession, yet it wasn't self-pity. Was liberation clothed in truth. Every sentence peeled back another layer of illusion. Every pause reclaimed another piece of her lost identity. Her tone never rose, but it commanded more silence than any shout could. Even the court reporter paused once, as if to absorb, to keep typing. Kody sat back, staring at his hands. The gold wedding ring still gleamed faintly, a relic of promises long decayed. He thought of the cameras that once adored him, all of the fan letters that called him an inspiration, of the children who now avoided his eyes. Pride had built him. Pride was now unmaking him. Christine looked at him again, and her voice softened, not out of mercy, but out of clarity. "There was a time," she said, "when I would have done anything to protect his image. I stayed quiet when I should have spoken, smiled when I should have walked away. But silence is complicity, and I won't be complicit in my own disappearance anymore." A few spectators nodded discreetly. One journalist wiped a tear. Cameras clicked again, flashes illuminating faces frozen in disbelief. The story unfolding before them wasn't just tabloid fodder anymore. Was human truth, raw and unfiltered. Christine's lawyer asked another question, but the words felt secondary. The real trial wasn't legal, it was emotional, moral, spiritual. Kody finally lifted his gaze. "Christine," he said quietly, his voice breaking the courtroom's rhythm. "Was it really that bad?" The question wasn't part of procedure. It was instinct, desperation, disguised as curiosity. Christine looked at him really, looked, and something in her expression softened. Not from affection, but from understanding. "Worse," she whispered, "because I kept hoping it would get better." Silence again, the kind that isn't empty, but full of history, of heartbreak, of the echoes of what can never be repaired. The judge cleared his throat again, though his voice now carried a gentler weight. "Mrs. Brown, you may continue." Christine nodded. "All I ever wanted was honesty," she said. "Not perfection, not control, just honesty. But when someone uses faith as a weapon and love as a leash, you start mistaking your chains for devotion." Kody flinched, and the room seemed to pulse with collective empathy. Every journalist there knew they had their headline, but what they didn't expect was the depth of what they were witnessing: a woman reclaiming her narrative. A man facing the ruin of his illusion. Christine took another slow breath, grounding herself as the courtroom seemed to tighten around her like a fist. The silence no longer frightened her. It felt like space she finally owned. She looked down at the papers in front of her, at the signature she'd once written beside Kody's name. And then back up at the man she used to call husband. "Do you remember," she asked softly, "the first time we stood in front of a crowd? You told everyone that love was about building forever. But you forgot to mention whose forever we were building, yours, not ours." Her words weren't cruel. They were clean, precise, and filled with the ache of clarity. Kody's face twitched. He opened his mouth, maybe to defend himself, maybe to explain, but no sound came. The cameras clicked again, each flash like a knife carving his image smaller. Christine continued, her tone sharpening just enough to draw blood. "You always said you wanted harmony. But harmony doesn't mean silencing everyone who sings differently. You wanted control, not peace." The judge shifted slightly in his chair, the leather creaking under his weight. Yet he didn't interrupt. He understood what was happening here. This wasn't merely testimony. This was a reckoning years in the making. Christine's lawyer asked gently, "Mrs. Brown, what is it you hope to achieve today?" For the first time, Christine smiled, not the polite curve of a public smile, but something deeper, freer. "I don't want revenge," she said. "I want recognition. I want it on record that my silence was not agreement, that my love was not weakness, and that my leaving was not betrayal." Her words filled the room like light spilling through a crack in a locked door. For years, she had been the quiet one, the agreeable one, the woman behind the man. Now she was something else entirely. The truth teller, the survivor, the witness to her own liberation. Kody looked away, his throat working as he swallowed hard. A memory slid into his mind, Christine laughing at their wedding, her hair catching sunlight. The certainty in her eyes when she'd said, "I do." He remembered thinking then that love would be easy if everyone just obeyed him. He hadn't realized until now how much of her he'd destroyed by mistaking authority for devotion. The bailiff stepped forward with a folder, and the judge nodded for him to hand it over. The sound of paper sliding against wood seemed to echo longer than it should. "Mr. Brown," the judge said, "you'll have your turn to speak shortly." But Kody didn't answer. His silence wasn't strength. It was defeat disguised as dignity. Christine turned back to the bench, her heart steady now. "People think leaving means giving up," she said. "But sometimes it's the bravest thing you can do. It means refusing to die quietly." Her voice trembled only once, when she added, "and I refuse." A low murmur rippled through the crowd, reporters whispering to each other, a few spectators blinking away tears. The air was electric, thick with emotion that no one wanted to break. The judge looked down at her statement, then back up at Christine. "You've spoken with courage," he said quietly, "and with grace." Kody lifted his head. "Grace?" His voice cracked with disbelief. "She's tearing apart our family in front of the world, and you call it grace?" Christine turned to him, and for the first time that day, her anger surfaced, calm but fierce. "No, Kody," she said. "You tore it apart long before this courtroom ever existed. You just did it behind closed doors." The impact of her words was visible. He blinked rapidly, as if trying to erase the truth from his vision. But the courtroom saw everything. The quiver in his jaw, the glint of moisture in his eyes. The judge tapped his gavel once, gently. "Mr. Brown, you'll have your chance." Kody leaned back, staring up at the ceiling like a man searching for answers in old prayers. The years of control, of performance, of carefully curated image all collapsed inward, leaving only exhaustion. He thought of the cameras that once adored him and realized they were still there, only now they weren't recording a leader. They were recording a man undone. Christine, meanwhile, felt something shift inside her. Not victory, exactly something quieter. Peace, the kind that comes from knowing the truth, no longer needs defending. The judge began to read from the documents before him, outlining the division of assets, the custody agreements, the terms of separation. But his voice faded into the background. Christine barely heard him. Her focus drifted to the windows, where sunlight filtered through dust, scattering gold flecks across the floor. For the first time in years, she noticed how beautiful simple light could be when you weren't trying to hide in it. Her mind wandered to her children, the nights she'd spent wondering if she was teaching them courage or chaos by leaving. The guilt that had weighed on her, the fear of being judged by those who'd never lived her life. She realized, standing here, that she had done what every mother hopes to do. She had chosen truth so her children would know it's worth choosing too. Kody shifted again, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I did what I thought was right," he muttered, "not to anyone in particular. I built what I thought God wanted." Christine looked at him, not unkindly. "Maybe God wanted honesty first," she said quietly. He met her eyes, and for a moment the world outside the courtroom disappeared. All that remained were two people who had once believed in forever and were now learning how to let go of it. The judge finished reading and looked up. "The court recognizes the dissolution of this union," he said formally. "Let the record show that both parties are free to move forward independently." There it was, freedom, wrapped in legal language. Simple, clean, final. Christine felt tears rise. But they weren't tears of grief. They were relief, like air rushing back into lungs that had forgotten how to breathe. She nodded once respectfully and whispered, "Thank you, Your Honor." Kody didn't speak again. His head dropped slightly, the image of a man realizing that power doesn't make you right, and silence doesn't make you wise. As Christine turned to leave, the crowd parted for her. Reporters called her name, cameras flashed, but she didn't stop. The heavy courtroom doors opened and sunlight spilled across her face. The brightness stung her eyes for a moment, but she welcomed it. After years of dim rooms and dimmer truths, she was finally standing in the open. Outside, the world roared, journalists shouting questions. Microphones thrust forward, cars passing, life continuing as though nothing monumental had just happened. But inside Christine, everything had changed. She could still hear the echo of the gavel, but now it sounded less like judgment and more like closure. She walked down the steps slowly, each one feeling like a chapter ending. Behind her, the courthouse loomed, a building of stone and history, but ahead of her stretched something far greater: possibility. For a moment, she turned and looked back through the glass doors. She could see Kody still sitting inside, motionless, surrounded by the wreckage of his own pride. He looked small against the vast emptiness of the courtroom. The image didn't give her joy, only understanding. Some people never realize they've lost until silence answers where applause used to be. Christine inhaled deeply, the crisp air filling her lungs like promise. The cameras still followed, the questions still came, but her smile was calm now, not for them, but for herself. As she reached her car, she paused, resting her hand on the door handle. The courthouse behind her seemed to hum faintly in the afternoon heat. For years, she had lived under the glare of reality television lights, performing a version of happiness that wasn't real. Now, in the honest daylight, she didn't need scripts or edits or approval. She had her truth, her dignity, and her peace. She opened the door, slid inside, and sat for a long moment before starting the engine. Through the windshield, she saw a group of reporters still gathered, waiting for a statement. She considered saying something, a final soundbite for the world, but instead, she whispered only to herself, "It's over." Then she smiled, a quiet, knowing smile that belonged entirely to her, and drove away. Inside the courthouse, Kody finally stood, watching her leave through the window. He felt the weight of everything he'd built, pressed down on him, the fame, the expectations, the fractured family. He thought of the countless times he believed control was the same as love. And for the first time, he understood the difference. No camera captured that moment. No audience applauded. It was private, painful, and real. The kind of reckoning that arrives when the show ends and the lights go out. Outside, the sun climbed higher, indifferent yet generous, shining equally on both of them. On the woman walking into her future and the man standing in the ruins of his past. And in that sunlight, justice wasn't just a verdict. It was freedom, quiet, complete, and entirely hers. Quiet, complete, and entirely hers.